The Confederacy of Independent Systems, despite only having a 5-year lifespan, had a massive impact on the galaxy, as its formation and militarization was the driving force behind one of the galaxy's largest wars. Born from the Separatist movement, a collection of factions that wished to leave the Republic for various reasons, it went down in history as a Sith puppet, a scattered collection of dissatisfied worlds that ended up being ruled over by megacorporations. But the Separatists weren't all Sith puppets, nor were they really one united group. Many Separatist worlds hated each other and the Confederacy's government. In this video, we're going to take a look at why.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Even if the Confederacy of Independent Systems was created by the Sith for the purposes of the Sith, the Separatist movement was not Sith, at least not entirely. The history of the Republic was stained with long millennia of the core worlds oppressing the planets of the Rim, and this created anti-Republic sentiment without any need for Sith interference. Most of this sentiment was perfectly valid, if not overtly in the right, which, for the record, is why the Sith specifically chose a separatist movement to serve their needs. The Confederacy of Independent Systems was controlled opposition, a boogeyman that the Sith could use to quell any sympathies toward justified rebellion against the Empire. Many Imperial citizens were quietly critical of their government's atrocities, but for 20 years, all Palpatine had to do to quell criticism was to call any potential rebels separatists and reference General Grievous. It only stopped working when the Clone Wars faded from recent memory. The Sith, of course, intended for this to be the case, and so when they formed the Confederacy, they brought many different potential threats into the fold, as the more they brought under the banner of the CIS, the more they'd be able to dismiss under the Empire. The CIS would not have formed naturally and for one simple reason. Many of these separatist groups were at odds with each other. To demonstrate this, we're going to quickly look at 5 separatist worlds in particular: Onderon, Ando, Yag'Dhul, Clak'dor 7, and Munilist. Onderon's secession was for purely political reasons. The people of Aziz were greatly dissatisfied with the Republic, and they believed Count Dooku had a better vision for the galaxy. Idealistic separatists like them were the true believers in the supposed cause of the Confederacy, the stated purpose, which was to establish a government separate from the Republic that wouldn't neglect the worlds of the Rim. Many separatist worlds were similarly idealistic. They believed in the principles the Republic supposedly upheld, but they didn't like how they'd been executed and saw what the Republic had become as irredeemable. But worlds like Ando seceded for much less idealistic reasons. Ando's ruling Spivarelda regime had a grudge against the Republic, which had intervened in a bloody civil war between it and the rebellious Andoan free colonies several decades before the Clone Wars. But while the Republic had forced the Spivarelda to demilitarize and call off its campaign against the free colonies, it had been unable to quell Ando's hatred for its rebellious colony worlds, and that hatred was extended to the Republic itself. Put simply, Ando seceded because it hated the Republic and because the Confederacy wouldn't stop them from restarting the Andoan Wars. A lot of worlds with long-standing grudges against their neighbors seceded for similar reasons. Yag'Dhul, on the other hand, couldn't have been more different. The Jivan of Yag'Dhul were a species of math nerds, and had to be, as the strong tidal forces of their homeworld's 4 moons periodically left swaths of the planet without atmosphere, and the Jivan had to be able to calculate when such events would take place. Shortly before the outbreak of the Clone Wars, their ruling mathematical body did the math on whether the Republic was still viable, and in dramatic fashion, they calculated the Republic wasn't going to last. They promptly seceded and joined the CIS. While as far as we know, no other separatist world seceded because of math, many systems did secede for the same reasons as Yag'Dhul. They believed the Republic was doomed, and they didn't want to be aboard that ship when it crashed. Clak'dor 7 had yet another reason for seceding. It didn't have much of a choice. Many separatist worlds seceded not because they hated the Republic or liked the Confederacy, but because it was necessary for their economies to stay afloat. In Clak'dor 7's case, all of its neighbors seceded in the lead up to the Clone Wars, and it ended up seceding as well because otherwise it would have been cut off from necessary trade. After all, while ideals are great, money always carries more political power. Lastly, we have Munilist, which represents the most well-known group of separatist worlds. Their motivations were simple: They wanted money, as much of it as they could possibly get. These corporate worlds were few in number, but they were incredibly powerful, and as we'll see in a moment, they came to dominate the Confederacy. They had virtually nothing in common with any of the other Separatist worlds. In fact, they honestly represented part of what many of them hated about the Republic. But they nonetheless hated the Republic themselves, primarily because they believed it was far too restrictive. Now, theoretically, the Confederacy of Independent Systems was run by the Separatist Parliament, a legislative body based on Araxis Secundus. The Separatist Parliament represented all Separatist worlds equally, unlike the Galactic Senate, which gave special treatment to certain powerful core worlds and corporations. Otherwise, it was pretty much just like the Galactic Senate, except with a far better aesthetic and, for some weird reason, a voice vote policy. The Separatist Parliament was the only official governing body of the Confederacy. The central government of the CIS was intended to consist purely of an elected legislator and a head of state to oversee it. Of course, this was all in theory, and the reality was much different. Instead, a second legislature, the Separatist Council, was formed. This was a small group of powerful politicians and corporate leaders that oversaw funding for the Confederacy's war machine. The Separatist Council quickly supplanted the Separatist Parliament and started calling all the shots in the Confederacy, and the leaders of the military held even more power than the councillors did. The only planetary interests either of them cared about were those of the worlds like Munilist, the corporate worlds whose vast bank accounts funded the war effort. Everyone else was virtually ignored. There were never any civil wars in the Confederacy per se, but nonetheless, many Separatist worlds hated each other, as you would probably expect. Virtually none of the Separatists liked the corporate worlds. They either didn't care much about them or hated them a little less than they hated the Republic. In turn, the corporate worlds generally had nothing but contempt for the other Separatist systems, which the corporations saw exclusively in terms of how much profit they could beat out of them. Without the involvement of the Sith, the corporate powers would likely never have allied with other Separatists. But many of the other Separatists hated each other as well. The Idealists didn't care much for vengeful worlds, those systems only in the Confederacy to stick it to the Republic or for an excuse to reopen old wounds, and the feeling was mutual. The Idealists saw their violent comrades as simplistic at best and barbaric at worst, while the vengeful worlds saw the Idealists as elitists. Those that had virtually no choice in joining the CIS didn't care much for the other Separatist worlds as well, as they usually shared neither the idealism nor the grudges of other independent systems. In addition, many Separatists came to dislike or even hate the Confederacy itself, especially the Idealists. What the CIS became during the Clone Wars wasn't what most independent systems had signed up for, and only the corporate worlds preferred the Separatist Council to the free state they had been promised. Some Separatists rightfully saw that the Separatist Council was little different from the blood-sucking core worlds that had caused them to leave the Republic to begin with, and this resulted in a loss of faith in the Confederacy. When those who voiced discontent at this turn of events started to be silent, they started to have second thoughts about which side they were on. Onderon exemplified this. At first, Onderon willingly seceded, believing in the ideas supposedly espoused by Count Dooku. Idealists like Mina Bonteri were prevalent in Aziz, as they had been for thousands of years, ever since Onderon's General Vaklu tried to break from the Republic 4,000 years earlier. But as the Clone Wars went on and the true nature of the Confederacy became apparent, the citizens of Onderon became discontented. As we all know, this ended in a rebellion in 20 BBY, which led to Onderon reluctantly rejoining the Republic. We don't know of many other cases like Onderon because it's likely the omnipresence of the droid army prevented such uprisings from being commonplace. It's also likely that many Separatist worlds didn't believe they could go back, as they still viewed the Republic as gravely evil. That would also prevent open rebellion. After all, what's the point in bothering if you're going to end up screwed either way? But the discontent persisted, and in many ways it actually led to a number of these disaffected worlds to support the Empire. So, that's a closer look at the inner turmoil of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. But what do you think? Would you have sided with any of these Separatist factions, or would you have been a Republic loyalist? Let us know in the comments section below. And just before you go guys, if you want to join our wider Geetsly's community, make sure you check out our Discord link in the description below where you can chat to myself and other Star Wars fans. And if you're in the mood to game, we do have our Geetsly's gaming network as well, where you can play games with other Star Wars fans on our Garry's Mod roleplay servers. And also, if you're keen to check out the music we always use on this channel, do check out the first link in the description below where we have the playlist for all of you to have a listen. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.